Hey, what's up guys, aarava here and welcome back to another video from my Let's Talk F1 series here on the channel, talking about some news roundup basically in the middle of week 2 of testing. I haven't actually done this ever, like a random news roundup in the middle of the testing, but a few interesting stories I want to try and dive into, and the biggest one being from yesterday. Fernando Alonso was seen in the paddock as a guest of McLaren, or obviously he's still employed by McLaren, so he's part of the team still, but he's basically in the full get-up in his full McLaren, like top and jacket and whatnot, just having a basically look around, I guess, listening in on what the engineers were saying and having some conversations with the drivers, I'm sure, and the entire team basically in the back rooms. And after that, had a few interviews in the paddock and whatnot, and it got announced this morning on Wednesday that he has become now an ambassador for McLaren Racing, and the headline is he will be doing some testing in the MCL 34, this year's 2019 McLaren car. And also, already they've said some testing of the 2020 car, which has not even been, we're nowhere near being seen. And they've already announced that as well. So, really interesting topic. Among other stuff I wanted to quickly touch upon from basically day 2 of week 2 of testing, or day 6 overall of F1 testing 2019. But yeah, that Alonso thing, I just want to get your thoughts, because I think it's a really interesting topic of, Alonso's in this ambassador role, which I kind of already felt he was kind of already in a way, because obviously he stepped away from Formula 1 and stopped doing it, and effectively kind of retired in a way, but never really used the official term retire, I guess, because there was always a kind of question mark, maybe does he return ever in the future, and just said he just wouldn't be racing in Formula 1. That was the kind of party line, wouldn't be racing in this year in Formula 1, and we thought at the time, there might be a possibility of him coming back, and even more so now, it seems very apparent that there's that, chance that could happen, because he's going to contest IndyCar, obviously, with McLaren, because he's still a McLaren driver, basically. He's basically doing a bit of a Jensen Button in a way. He's not racing, but he's still part of the team. And now he's become an ambassador for the team. He's going to be doing some testing for this year's car. Not right now in pre-season testing. That's going to be remaining with Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris. But I'm assuming any in-season tests, because there are a few tiny ones that pop up, he's going to be, I guess, doing those maybe. Maybe the tyre tests as well. Might do some of those as a bit of a, I don't know, kind of, because the tyre tests, they can't really do much on the car. It's more just understanding the tyres. So maybe Alonso can do those as a bit of a PR stunt in a kind of way. But it seems to me as well, the way they worded it in the article from, what they announced is he will still be helping a little bit basically for the development, talking to the drivers, talking to the engineers, giving his advice, taking in information and giving back reactionary information, I guess, from what the engineers are saying about how the car is reacting, and also, doing a bit of driver coaching in the way with Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris, obviously being, one of the most experienced F1 drivers out there and one of the most esteemed, really, even now that he's left. And so it's an interesting thing of, we talked about already that he's going to leave, but I'm pretty sure now, I think, if the McLaren is any kind of bit competitive, I think he returns. I don't know if that's going to be 2020, because I really don't, I'm not that positive anymore on how quickly McLaren can, get back up the grid, and I think they themselves are also waking up to the reality of they can't really turn things around in 2 years' time. But, let's say even 2021, 2022, I think Alonso, yes, he'll be old, but the thing is, he's already quite old anyway, as it is in the F1 grid, and yet I think all of us can agree he's almost at his peak of his career. He says he's at the peak of his career. I think he really was in the last 2 years, was at the top prime of his driving ability, because he was just getting some results in those in the McLaren cars of the last 2 years that it just didn't deem possible, basically. So I do agree with that, and the way he showed up to Indy 500 in 2017 and rocked up and nearly won the whole thing before the DNF. I really do think he's in his prime at the moment, and he has more to give. So if then McLaren randomly gets better by 2022, I'm saying I think he could definitely return. I don't think it's going to be possible in 2020. I just don't see the car being turned around. But it's an interesting topic, and Alonso is definitely still very much linked with Formula 1 and McLaren. So, yeah, interesting deep dive, and let me know what you guys think. Do you hold that same kind of, opinion that, yeah, you definitely think he will return if and when that car is competitive, or do you really think this is going to be an ambassador role, and that it's just going to be an ambassador role, doing some few tests, but in reality, he's kind of maybe fallen out of switch, I guess, with F1 in a way. He wants to obviously win races, and that's why, that's in the interview he did in the press release, that he wants to win races. He can try and go for the win at Indy 500 and try and complete the Triple Crown. You know, he wants to do other, you know, he is doing other series in terms of he's still doing WEC at the moment. He wants to try and win that, and he just wants to win races, basically. He said that, you know, he would return to F1 if there's a possibility of winning some things there. He literally said that in the press release, so or in an interview he did in the paddock, so I think it's possible, but let me know what you guys think. But that's the kind of first major bit of news I want to kind of touch upon. And then we've got a few little, well, tiny tech updates, really. The major one being actually Alfa Romeo. So we talked about in yesterday's video, if you saw that, the kind of Mercedes B-spec car, which I just want to point out, if those of you who did watch that, a few people were commenting below saying it was absolutely, you know, just idiotic for me to even suggest that, you know, the Mercedes upgrades were reactionary to what Ferrari did. I wasn't suggesting that. I was stating the paddock. You know, some actual journalist in the paddock was tweeting that, you know, having a little bit of devil advocate, a bit of, you know, joking around that, because could this be reactionary? I didn't actually think it was a reactionary thing. I was trying to pose a question just to get some kind of comments below. So I guess kind of I got what I wanted to, basically, trying to get some conversation below. In reality, you know, I did even state that it probably was more of a thing of Mercedes pre-planning it, but just kind of happily, you know, worked out that way. Or maybe there was a few things on the back burner they kind of ramped up acceleration for, because there's definitely some stuff maybe that they're testing out for Melbourne that they didn't want to actually have her at this test, but because of the kind of situation they were in from last week, they maybe brought some more upgrades than they were planning to. Because even Vettel today said in an interview he thought it was very odd to see so many upgrades on the Mercedes car and so many innovations at once on the car. So I think there are a few things about the Mercedes car that were brought forward that were going to be brought at Melbourne, but now they brought it for testing too, because they want to doubly make sure these things are going to work and be better for the car and the handling, after kind of what Bottas and Hamilton said. But just want to kind of note on that, because that was a bit, you know, I just want to point that out. I wasn't actually genuinely thinking they can turn around, because like I even stated, F1 teams, there's no way they can turn around things in like literally a weekend's time. These things take like weeks minimum to plan, if not, you know, a month for a good, you know, big upgrade basically on the car. I mean, like they said, to change the front wing would take 3 months of planning and preparation to do that. But anyway, on the note of that Mercedes upgrade, they had those two horn deflectors which we talked about, and Alfa Romeo today had a similar sort of thing, the same area of the car, but not it wasn't like a horn. Basically, they had a series of 4 winglets sprouting out, but in the same sort of, you know, array area of the Mercedes horns, but these were a lot more directionally, so deflecting the air very much so to the side end of the chassis, to the winglets that the Alfa Romeo has on the side of the chassis. And so you're kind of getting into that creeping motion. I guess there's maybe this box area on the car, which the F1 technical rules state, you know, there's no rule against having winglets there, but teams haven't really bothered to, you know, really exploit that as much so far in these kind of new rules, basically. So Alfa Romeo going through, and again, kind of poses the question, will Alfa Romeo, you know, if that front wing's that silver bullet that we talked about in the podcast, if they bring these innovations, I have a very good feel, and I'm not just saying it because I'm affiliated, you know, with my esports team powering the team. You know, genuinely, if you look at that car, it looks like they're a team this year that I think, you know, they're trying their hardest to really get up to the top of the midfield and really try and battle, you know, the likes of Renault, really, at the very fine end top, and be the top of the best of the rest, and be that P7, you know, on the racetrack team. And, you know, I'm really liking the vibe so far, so I hope it turns out for them, and we rock up to Melbourne, we see that in practice, because it would be a really good feel and a really good thing to see a team that was, you know, in financial disarray 4 years ago or 3 years ago, you know, getting that new investment and coming through like this. So yeah, just a tiny little tech update on the Alfa Romeo team, but really nice to see some little innovations like that. And I think, you know, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing thing, the Alfa Romeo one, compared to the Mercedes, for me, in my opinion. With the horns, they look a bit more aggressive and a bit more artsy in a way, but with Alfa Romeo, it kind of starts to look a bit more like a rocket ship in a way, kind of almost like what we had back in the day in like 08, you know, pre-09 basically. And I always maintain that, you know, even though those era of cars, you know, the racing, you know, it was very hard to follow, very much so in that era, you know, with the amount of aero going on, and the races could be very, very linear in those eras racing if you watch back. But you got to admit, those rocket ship cars look pretty damn sick, at least in my opinion. You know, some people do like that smooth kind of body kind of thing, but, you know, yeah, it's nice to kind of see these innovations coming through, and hopefully, well, we probably will see a lot of other teams maybe trying to adopt those kind of things. Then we just come through kind of news in day 2 of week 2 of testing. Good to see Williams, I got to say, you know, for as much as I bag on Williams. Good to see Williams racking up the miles and getting over 100 laps there with Russell and Kubica. Good to see, that, and them trying to catch up a little bit. We had Renault with a very, very odd-looking test on their front wing, which was very, very odd. I'm sure doing some sensor work, basically, and trying to get some info on the front wing, but looked hilarious nonetheless. Kind of almost reminded me of that. I can't remember the team. I think it might have been, I can't remember the name because I'm not much into classical F1, but I think it was, I want to say it was an orange-coloured car. Might have been Arrows or something like that, or Spiker, I don't know, where they had that front wing that was genuinely a little top wing on the top. It kind of looked like that in a way. McLaren topped the timings for the second day in a row in week 2, and I think very much though it's almost like week 1 where they're doing some glory laps, because I think they just want to get that in at the very end of the day, or I think Sainz did his in the middle of the day. But I think McLaren, don't read too much into it. I think McLaren's masking where their car is going to be. It seems like on the long run pace, especially from last week, the McLaren car still has plenty of work to do. But obviously they have taken a step forward, clearly. Their bargewood area and the side pod area was way more complex than they had last year. So, still, positive, I guess a good vibe sign from McLaren, if anything. And that's always good to see for a team that's trying to get back to where they were. And then finally, Red Bull had a bit of a weird situation. Verstappen had a spin through the gravel trap, and he never got back out after that. That was quite late on, though. I think it was like afternoonish. But they still didn't get out, so that was a little bit odd for me. So I don't know, maybe they finished their program of testing, or maybe they're near to finishing it, so they just didn't bother going out. Or maybe there was an issue with pickup with gravel. Maybe got somewhere they didn't want it to in the car. Perhaps I don't think it was. We don't really even know if it was like an engine or a mechanical sort of issue. At least I haven't read about it yet. But that was just a bit of a caveat, kind of last minute thing to kind of note upon there. So yeah, that's been a very random, I know, kind of video. I've never done anything like this where it's like a midweek testing update. I usually wait till the very end of testing of the week to do like a tech roundup, but this was more of a news roundup. But I mean, I've been really enjoying talking a bit more about real life Formula 1 in the last month or so. I did this pretty much last year, where I talked a lot of real life F1 on the channel, because obviously right now is a bit of a slow period for the whole gaming stuff, and it's always good to talk about the sport you love and all of us love on the channel. So yeah, let me know what you think about any of this stuff I talked about, especially the Alonso thing. That's the kind of main talking point, the kind of really interesting news I guess that broke this morning of that whole ambassador role thing. And if you did enjoy the video and you enjoy these style of videos, then do let me know in the comments below and hit that like button, guys. And if you are new around here, you can subscribe for more weekly Formula 1 content. I've been around for 100 a day, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.